The wind howled through the empty streets of Oatman, Arizona, kicking up dust and memories in equal measure as Willow Fairchild stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a worn leather suitcase and the burden of her past etched across her face. It was 1878, 3 years since the smallpox epidemic had swept through her hometown in Missouri, taking her family and leaving her marked in ways that went far beyond the visible scars that now covered her once smooth skin. Willow adjusted her bonnet, pulling it lower over her face as she surveyed the small mining town. Oatman wasn't much a handful of wooden buildings clinging to the harsh landscape, gold mines scattered in the surrounding hills, and people who'd come to either strike it rich or escape something worse. For Willow, it was the latter. In a town full of strangers, perhaps her scars would matter less than the ghost she'd left behind. "Miss, you need a hand with that bag," the stagecoach driver's voice cut through her thoughts. His eyes flickered to her face and then quickly away, a reaction Willow had grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. "No, thank you. I can manage." Her voice was soft but firm, the voice of someone who had learned self-reliance the hard way. The driver nodded, uncomfortable, and busied himself with the rest of the luggage. Willow took a deep breath and made her way toward the town's only hotel, a 2-story building with peeling paint and a sign that swung in the desert breeze. Oatman Hotel and Saloon. She'd come here on the promise of work. Her cousin's letter had mentioned the town needed a schoolteacher, and Willow had been a teacher back in Missouri before the epidemic, before everything changed. The hotel's interior was dim after the harsh brightness outside. A man with a bushy mustache looked up from behind the counter as the bell above the door announced her arrival. "Afternoon, miss. Looking for a room?" "Yes, please. I'm the new schoolteacher, Willow Fairchild." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Oh, yes. Mayor Jenkins mentioned you'd be arriving. We've been without a proper teacher going on 6 months now." He paused, his eyes lingering on her face before he awkwardly continued. "I'm Harold Jenkins, the mayor's brother. We're mighty pleased to have you here." Willow nodded, used to the discomfort her appearance caused. "I'm happy to be here, Mr. Jenkins. When can I see the schoolhouse?" "First thing tomorrow, if you'd like. For now, let me show you to your room. You must be tired from your journey." As Harold led her upstairs, Willow caught sight of herself in a tarnished mirror hanging in the hallway. Even in the dim light, the pockmarks were visible, small craters scattered across her cheeks, forehead, and chin. Once, she'd been called pretty. Once, she'd believed a future of love and family lay ahead of her. Now, at 25, she'd resigned herself to a life of teaching other people's children, while her own dreams of motherhood withered like flowers in the desert sun. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the main street. Willow set down her suitcase, removed her bonnet, and stood at the window, watching the life of Oatman unfold below. Men in dusty clothes emerged from the mines in the distance. A woman hung laundry behind one of the buildings. 2 children chased each other down the street. This would be her life now. Teaching by day, returning to this room by night, alone with her books and her memories. It wasn't what she'd dreamed of as a young woman, but it was something. A purpose. A reason to continue. The next morning, Willow rose early, dressed in her best navy blue dress, and pinned her hair in a neat bun. She applied a thin layer of rice powder to her face, not enough to hide the scars, for nothing could truly conceal them, but enough to dull their angry appearance. The routine was familiar, a daily armor she donned before facing the world. Harold Jenkins was waiting for her downstairs. "Morning, Miss Fairchild. Ready to see your schoolhouse?" "Yes, very much so." They walked down Oatman's Main Street, Harold pointing out the general store, the assayer's office, and the sheriff's station. The town was beginning to stir, miners heading to the hills, shopkeepers sweeping their porches. "That there's Doc Wilson's place," Harold said, indicating a small white building. "Good doctor, though he likes his whiskey a bit too much on Saturdays." Willow nodded politely, making mental notes. It was always good to know who was who in a small town. "And here," Harold said, stopping before a simple wooden building with a small bell tower, "is your schoolhouse." It was modest but well-maintained with a small yard in front. Willow felt a flutter of excitement, the first she'd felt in a long time. This was her domain now, a place where her knowledge and abilities would matter more than her appearance. "It's lovely," she said, genuinely pleased. Harold produced a key. 12 children enrolled currently, ages 6 to 13. Some come from the mines, others from ranches outside town. School term starts next Monday. As they approached the door, the sound of hoofbeats made them both turn. A rider was coming down the street, his horse kicking up dust. Even from a distance, Willow could see he sat tall in the saddle, moving in that easy rhythm of someone born to ride. Harold waved. "Well, look who's back. That's Mason O'Malley, one of our local ranchers. His place is about 5 miles outside town." The rider slowed as he approached, and Willow's breath caught in her throat. Mason O'Malley was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn leather vest. His face was tanned from the sun, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested a man who smiled often. He couldn't have been more than 30. "Harold," Mason nodded in greeting, tipping his hat. His eyes shifted to Willow, and unlike most people, his gaze didn't dart away when he saw her scars. Instead, he looked directly at her, his blue eyes curious but not pitying. "Mason, this is Miss Willow Fairchild, our new schoolteacher." Miss Fairchild, Mason O'Malley. His ranch supplies most of our beef, and he helps the sheriff when needed. Mason dismounted in one fluid motion and extended a hand to Willow. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Fairchild. Oatman's been needing a teacher, something fierce." His hand was warm and calloused against hers, his grip firm but gentle. Willow felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. I'm looking forward to teaching here." "Mason brings his niece and nephew to school," Harold explained. "His sister passed 2 years ago and he's raising them now." Something flickered in Mason's eyes, a shadow of grief quickly masked. "Emma's 8 and Samuel's 10. Good kids, though Samuel can be a handful. Been trying to teach them myself, but I'm no scholar." "I'm sure they're lovely," Willow said. "I look forward to meeting them." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Harold cleared his throat. "Well, shall we see inside, Miss Fairchild?" "Yes, of course." Willow nodded to Mason. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. O'Malley." "Mason, please." His smile was warm, genuine. "And likewise, Miss Fairchild." As Harold unlocked the schoolhouse, Willow couldn't help glancing back. Mason was still watching her, something like interest in his gaze. When he caught her looking, he tipped his hat again before mounting his horse and continuing down the street. The schoolhouse was simple but functional, with rows of wooden desks facing a larger desk and blackboard at the front. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. "It needs a good cleaning," Harold admitted, "but it's all yours to arrange as you like." Willow ran a hand over one of the desks, her mind already filling with plans. "It's perfect, Mr. Jenkins." "I can start preparing right away." "Wonderful. I'll let you get settled in then. Town council meetings tonight at 7 if you'd like to introduce yourself. Not required, of course." After Harold left, Willow stood alone in the quiet schoolhouse. This was her fresh start, her chance to build something meaningful. Yet Mason O'Malley's direct gaze lingered in her mind, unsettling her in ways she hadn't expected. For the first time in years, a man had truly looked at her without flinching away. She pushed the thought aside. She hadn't come to Oatman for romance. That door had closed for her long ago. She was here to teach, to make a difference in children's lives. Nothing more. The week passed quickly as Willow prepared the schoolhouse, cleaning every surface, organizing books, and creating lesson plans. She attended the town council meeting, where she was welcomed warmly, if sometimes awkwardly, by Oatman's leading citizens. The mayor's wife, Beatrice Jenkins, was particularly kind, inviting Willow to Sunday services and introducing her to other women in town. By Monday morning, Willow felt ready. She stood at the schoolhouse door, ringing the bell as children began to arrive. They came in twos and threes, some shyly, others boldly, all curious about their new teacher. Willow greeted each one with a smile, trying not to notice how some of the younger ones stared openly at her scarred face before their parents hushed them. She was helping a small girl hang up her coat when she heard the sound of horses outside. Stepping to the door, she saw Mason O'Malley dismounting from his horse, helping down a girl with long braids and a freckled boy who looked as if he'd rather be anywhere else. "Good morning, Mr. O'Malley," Willow called, her voice steadier than she felt. Mason looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Morning, Miss Fairchild. Brought my troublemakers as promised." He ruffled the boy's hair, earning a scowl. "This here's Samuel and this is Emma. Kids, this is your new teacher, Miss Fairchild." Emma stepped forward immediately, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Your face has lots of marks," she said before Mason could stop her. "Did you get hurt?" Willow felt the familiar tightening in her chest but kept her smile in place. "I had smallpox when I was younger." "The marks are scars from the illness." Emma nodded, processing this information with the straightforward acceptance of a child. "My mama had a big scar on her arm from when she got kicked by a horse. She said scars are just reminders that we're stronger than whatever tried to hurt us." Mason placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "That's enough questions, Em. Time for school." He looked at Willow apologetically. "Sorry about that. Kids and their questions." "It's all right," Willow said, genuinely touched by Emma's simple acceptance. "Children are naturally curious." "I'd rather honesty than whispers." Samuel, who had been hanging back, finally spoke. "Are you really going to teach us about the whole world? Uncle Mason says you're real smart." Willow glanced at Mason, surprised. "Did he now?" "Well, I'll certainly do my best, Samuel." Mason cleared his throat, looking slightly embarrassed. "Right, well, I'll leave you to it. I'll be back at 3 to pick them up." As he turned to go, Willow found herself saying, "Mr. O'Malley, we're going to be learning about different types of farms this week. Perhaps you wouldn't mind if we brought the class to visit your ranch sometime, to see a working cattle operation." Mason paused, considering. "I think that could be arranged. How about Friday afternoon? I could send the wagon for everyone." "That would be wonderful, thank you." As Mason rode away, Willow realized she was looking forward to Friday more than she should be. Shaking off the feeling, she turned back to her waiting students. Today wasn't about Mason O'Malley or her foolish, unwanted attraction to him. Today was about these children and the knowledge she had to share. The first day of school went better than Willow had dared hope. The children were mostly attentive, if sometimes restless, and by the end of the day, she'd begun to learn their personalities. Emma O'Malley was bright and eager to please, while her brother Samuel was clearly intelligent but tried to hide it behind a facade of disinterest. The Miller twins were mischievous but good-natured, and little Betsy Coleman needed extra help with her letters but showed a talent for arithmetic. When the final bell rang, the children gathered their things and raced outside where parents waited. Mason arrived precisely at 3, as promised, and Willow couldn't help noticing how both Emma and Samuel's faces lit up when they saw him. "How'd they do?" Mason asked as the children showed him the pages they'd written. "Very well," Willow replied. "Emma has a wonderful imagination, and Samuel has a natural gift for mathematics." Samuel looked up in surprise, as if he hadn't expected to be praised. Mason ruffled his hair again, but this time the boy didn't scowl. "That's good to hear," Mason said. "Their mother was the smartest person I knew. Seems they inherited her brains." "And not your stubborn head," Emma added cheekily, dodging as Mason playfully reached for her braids. Willow laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even herself. It had been so long since she'd laughed freely. Mason's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a moment of connection, fleeting but real. Then he cleared his throat and helped the children onto their horses. "Looking forward to Friday," he said. "The kids can show you around the ranch. Might even let Samuel show off his roping skills if he's been practicing." "I have been," Samuel protested. "I can rope a fence post 9 times out of 10 now." "Fence posts don't move, boy," Mason teased. "Wait till you try it on a real calf." As they rode away, Emma turned to wave. Willow waved back, watching until they disappeared around a bend in the road. The week passed quickly, each day bringing new challenges and rewards in the classroom. Willow found herself looking forward to the mornings, to the bright faces of her students and the satisfaction of watching them learn. For the first time in years, she felt useful, needed. She also found herself thinking of Mason O'Malley more than she should. She told herself it was natural he was the uncle of 2 of her students, after all, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was something about his direct gaze, the way he looked at her without flinching, that awakened feelings she'd thought long dead. Friday arrived clear and warm. The children were buzzing with excitement about the ranch visit, barely able to focus on their morning lessons. By noon, when the large wagon Mason had sent arrived, they were practically bouncing with anticipation. "Remember," Willow cautioned as they climbed aboard, "this is still a school day. I expect you all to be on your best behavior and to listen carefully. We'll be writing about what we learn when we return to school on Monday." The wagon driver, an older man named Hank who worked for Mason, chuckled. "Don't you worry, Miss Fairchild. The boss has been preparing for this visit all week. Got the whole ranch spruced up like it's Sunday dinner." The ride to the O'Malley ranch took almost an hour, the road winding through increasingly rugged terrain. As they crested a hill, the ranch came into view in the valley below, a sprawling collection of buildings surrounding a large white farmhouse, pastures stretching in all directions, dotted with cattle. "It's beautiful," Willow murmured, impressed by the scale and order of the operation. Hank nodded proudly. Mason built most of it himself after his pa died. Started with nothing but 50 head of cattle and a run-down cabin. Now he's got the best breeding stock in the territory. As the wagon pulled into the yard, Mason emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. He wore a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms tanned by the sun. His face broke into a wide smile when he saw the wagon. "Welcome to Circle O Ranch," he called, helping Willow down from the wagon. His hands were strong and sure at her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for having us," Willow said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. She stepped back, smoothing her skirts. "The children have been looking forward to this all week." "So have I," Mason admitted, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Then, raising his voice, he addressed the children. "All right, everyone. We've got lots to see, so stay together. Samuel and Emma will help show you around." The tour began at the barn, where Mason explained how they cared for the horses and what each piece of equipment was used for. The children were fascinated by the tack room, with its saddles and bridles hanging neatly on the walls. Next came the blacksmith's forge, where Mason's ranch hand Tom was shoeing a horse, the children watching in awe as sparks flew from the red-hot metal. Throughout it all, Willow found herself watching Mason as much as the ranch. He was patient with the children's endless questions, knowledgeable about every aspect of ranch life, and surprisingly articulate as he explained complex processes in terms the youngest students could understand. It was clear the ranch was more than a business to him. It was a legacy, a home, a way of life he deeply loved. After showing them the cattle pens and explaining the branding process, without any actual demonstrations, to the disappointment of some of the boys, Mason led them to a grassy area where a simple lunch had been laid out: sandwiches, apples, and cookies, prepared by his housekeeper, Mrs. Holloway. "Thought you all might be hungry after all that walking," he said, inviting everyone to help themselves. Willow sat on a blanket with some of the younger girls, helping cut sandwiches into manageable pieces. She was so focused on making sure everyone had enough to eat that she didn't notice Mason sitting down beside her until he spoke. "You're good with them," he said, nodding toward the children. "They listened to you." Willow smiled, watching as Emma helped little Betsy pour a cup of lemonade. Children respond to respect. If you treat them as capable of understanding, they usually rise to the occasion. "Is that why you became a teacher?" Mason asked, genuinely curious. Willow hesitated, unsure how much to share. "I've always loved learning, and I wanted to pass that on." "But after the epidemic," she trailed off, her hand unconsciously rising to her cheek before she caught herself and lowered it. Mason's eyes followed the movement, his expression softening. "Must have been hard," he said simply. "It was." Willow was surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. "Teaching gave me purpose when I needed it most. Children are remarkably adaptable. They ask about my scars once, accept the answer, and move on. Adults are the ones who stare, or worse, pretend not to see me at all." Mason was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "People fear what they don't understand," he finally said. "Makes them act foolish. Doesn't make it right, though." Before Willow could respond, Samuel ran up, breathless with excitement. "Uncle Mason, can we show them the new calves now, please?" Mason glanced at Willow, raising an eyebrow in question. She nodded, smiling at Samuel's enthusiasm. "All right, everyone," Mason called, standing and offering Willow a hand up. "Let's go see the spring calves, but remember, we have to be quiet and calm so we don't scare the mothers." The afternoon continued with visits to the calving pens, the chicken coop, and finally, a demonstration of roping by Mason and Samuel. The boy's face glowed with pride as he successfully lassoed a practice dummy 3 times in a row, earning applause from his classmates and a warm, "well done" from his teacher. All too soon, it was time to head back to town. As the children reluctantly climbed back into the wagon, Mason approached Willow. "I was wondering," he said, his voice unexpectedly hesitant, "if you might stay for dinner, Mrs. Holloway always cooks too much on Fridays, and the kids would love to show you the rest of the house." Willow knew she should decline. Staying for dinner, alone with Mason and the children, was crossing a line from professional to personal. Yet the invitation was so genuine, the prospect of a home-cooked meal and conversation so appealing, that she found herself nodding. "I'd like that, thank you." Mason's smile was worth any impropriety. "Great. I'll ride alongside the wagon into town, make sure everyone gets home safe, then bring you back here. If that suits you." "That sounds fine." As the wagon pulled away, Willow settled in among her chattering students, listening to their excited recounting of everything they'd seen. But her mind was on the evening ahead, and the tall rancher riding beside them, whose eyes seemed to see past her scars to the woman beneath. True to his word, Mason saw every child safely home before escorting Willow back to the ranch. The ride back was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about the school, the children, and life in Oatman. Willow found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't with anyone in years, laughing at Mason's stories and sharing some of her own. The farmhouse was larger than it had appeared from a distance, a two-story structure with a wide porch wrapped around three sides. Inside, it was surprisingly elegant, with polished wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and bookshelves lining one wall of the sitting room. "This is lovely," Willow said, running a hand along the spines of the books. "I didn't expect so many books," Mason finished, looking slightly embarrassed. "My sister's influence. Caroline was the reader in the family, always said a house without books is like a body without a soul." Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair freshly brushed and wearing a clean dress. "Miss Fairchild, Uncle Mason said you're staying for dinner. Can I show you my room? I have a dollhouse that used to be my mama's." With Emma's small hand in hers, Willow was led upstairs to a charming room painted pale yellow, with a small bed covered in a patchwork quilt and a beautiful dollhouse on a table by the window. "Mama made all the furniture herself," Emma said proudly, showing Willow tiny chairs and tables crafted with remarkable skill. "Uncle Mason made the house for her when she was little, and she gave it to me before she went to heaven." Willow sat on the edge of the bed, examining the miniature furniture with genuine appreciation. "Your mother was very talented, and very lucky to have a brother who would make something so beautiful for her." Emma nodded solemnly. "Uncle Mason can make lots of things. He made Samuel a wooden horse last Christmas, and he's building a bigger chicken coop because the old one is too small now. He takes good care of you, doesn't he?" Emma's face grew serious. "After Mama died, he promised we wouldn't ever have to leave our home. Some people said he should send us to live with our aunt in St. Louis, but he said no, we belong here." She looked up at Willow with earnest eyes. "Do you like Uncle Mason, Miss Fairchild?" The directness of the question took Willow by surprise. "Yes, of course. Your uncle is a very kind man." "He likes you too," Emma said with the certainty of a child. "He brushed his hair extra today and put on his good shirt." Before Willow could respond to this revelation, Samuel appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Holloway says dinner's ready, and Uncle Mason says to wash your hands first, Emma." Dinner was served in a dining room that clearly wasn't used every day, with a polished table set with good china and silver. Mrs. Holloway, a plump woman with kind eyes, had outdone herself roast beef, mashed potatoes, fresh biscuits, and vegetables from the kitchen garden. Conversation flowed easily, with Emma chattering about school and Samuel occasionally interjecting with observations of his own. Willow noticed how Mason drew the boy out, asking his opinion on ranch matters in a way that made Samuel sit up straighter, pleased to be taken seriously. After dinner, while Mrs. Holloway cleared the table with Emma's help, Mason invited Willow and Samuel to the sitting room. The boy immediately went to a chess set on a small table by the window. "Uncle Mason's teaching me to play," he explained to Willow. "I can almost beat him now." Mason laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. "Almost is right. You still fall for the Queen's Gambit every time." While Samuel set up the pieces, Mason offered Willow a seat by the fireplace, where a small fire took the chill off the evening air. "Thank you for today," she said. The children learned so much, and it was wonderful to see them so engaged. "I enjoyed it too," Mason admitted. "Been too long since this house was filled with children's voices. Caroline used to host all the neighbor kids for Christmas every year. Place would be bursting at the seams." "You miss her very much," Willow observed softly. Mason nodded, his eyes on the flames. Every day. She was my only family apart from the kids. Our parents died years ago, Pa from a fall when I was 20, Ma from pneumonia 2 winters later. I'm sorry, Willow said, understanding the weight of such loss. I lost my parents and younger brother to the smallpox. I was the only one in our family who survived. Mason's eyes met hers, filled with empathy rather than pity. That's a heavy burden to carry alone. As is raising your sister's children, I imagine, he shrugged. They're good kids, and they're family. You do what you have to do for family. From the chess table, Samuel called, Uncle Mason, I'm waiting. Are you going to play or not? Mason looked torn between his nephew and Willow, but she smiled encouragingly. Go ahead. I'll help Emma with the dishes. Later, after the chess game, which Mason won, but not easily, and after the children had been sent to bed with hugs for Willow and promises to see her at school on Monday, Mason and Willow sat alone by the fire. Mrs. Holloway had retired to her quarters in a small building behind the main house, leaving them in a privacy that should have felt improper but somehow didn't. I should be getting back to town, Willow said reluctantly, aware of how late it was growing. It's a long ride in the dark, Mason said. I've had Hank prepare the guest room. Thought you might stay the night and I'd take you back in the morning, unless that would make you uncomfortable. The offer was practical, not presumptuous, but Willow still hesitated. What would people say? Mason's expression grew serious. Mrs. Holloway is here as chaperone, and the children too. But if you're worried about gossip, I understand. I can saddle up and take you back now. Willow thought about the long, dark ride back to town and the empty hotel room waiting for her. Here, there was warmth and conversation and the first real connection she'd felt with anyone in years. No, she decided. I'll stay, thank you. Relief showed in Mason's smile. Good, I'm not ready for the evening to end just yet. They talked for another hour, sharing stories of their lives, Mason's dreams for the ranch, Willow's experiences teaching in Missouri before the epidemic. As the fire burned low, Mason finally stood and showed her to the guest room, a comfortable space with a 4-poster bed and a window overlooking the moonlit pastures. Sleep well, Willow, he said, using her first name for the first time. I'm glad you came today. So am I, she replied softly, and found that she truly meant it. The next morning, Willow woke to the sounds of a working ranch rooster's crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, the clatter of pots from the kitchen below. She dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, pinning her hair as neatly as possible, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was warm and fragrant with the smell of coffee and biscuits. Emma was setting the table while Samuel fed scraps to a dog Willow hadn't seen the day before. Mrs. Holloway stood at the stove, turning bacon in a cast-iron skillet. Good morning, Miss Fairchild, the housekeeper greeted her. Sleep well. Very well, thank you. Uncle Mason's out checking the new calf that was born last night, Emma informed her. He said to tell you he'll be back for breakfast. Willow helped Emma finish setting the table, then sat at the window watching the activity in the yard. Ranch hands moved between buildings, carrying tools or leading horses. It was a scene of purposeful industry. Everything and everyone with a role to play. Mason appeared from the direction of the barn, talking with an older ranch hand. Even from a distance, his presence commanded attention, tall and straight-backed, gesturing as he spoke, nodding at whatever the other man was saying. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up toward the house, his face breaking into a smile when he saw her at the window. Willow found herself smiling back, lifting her hand in greeting. There was something dangerously appealing about this man, and the life he'd built here, the home filled with books and children's laughter. the land stretching in all directions, the sense of belonging that seemed to permeate everything. Breakfast was a cheerful affair, with the children recounting dreams and plans for the day. Mason listened attentively, asking questions and offering suggestions, all while passing dishes and pouring coffee with the ease of a man accustomed to family meals. "I thought we might take the long way back to town," he suggested to Willow as Mrs. Holloway cleared the plates. "There's a view from the North Ridge I'd like to show you, if you're not in a hurry." "I'd like that," Willow agreed, ignoring the knowing look that passed between Emma and Mrs. Holloway. After saying goodbye to the children and thanking Mrs. Holloway for her hospitality, Willow found herself once again riding beside Mason, this time on a pretty mare he said was gentlest in his stable. They took a trail that wound through wooded hills, emerging eventually onto a ridge that offered a spectacular view of the valley below, with the ranch buildings tiny in the distance and Oatman just visible on the horizon. "It's breathtaking," Willow said, genuinely awed by the expanse of land and sky. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Mason admitted. "When things get overwhelming or decisions need making, I come up here to think. Helps put things in perspective." They dismounted, letting the horses graze while they stood at the edge of the ridge. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the rustle of wind through the grass and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. "Willow," Mason said finally, turning to face her. "I've enjoyed your company these past 2 days, more than I expected to." Willow felt her heart quicken at his direct gaze. "I've enjoyed it too. I'd like to call on you properly if you'd allow it. Sunday after church, perhaps." The offer hung in the air between them, fraught with possibilities and complications. Willow looked away, out over the vast landscape. "Mason, I'm not sure that's wise. I'm the town's schoolteacher. I need to maintain a certain reputation." "Is that the only reason?" he asked quietly. Willow touched her cheek, the familiar texture of her scars beneath her fingertips. "You know it isn't. Look at me, Mason. Really look. This is who I am now. People stare, they whisper. Any man seen courting me would face the same scrutiny." Mason stepped closer, his expression serious. "Do you think I care about that, about what people might say?" "You should," Willow insisted. "You have a position in this community, a business that depends on relationships, the children to think about." "The children adore you already," Mason countered. "And as for the rest, I've never much cared what people think of me. I care what you think, though. So if you're not interested, just say so, and I'll respect that. But don't push me away because you think you're protecting me from something." His directness left Willow speechless. For so long, she defined herself by her scars, assuming they defined her in others' eyes as well. To have someone challenge that assumption was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. Mason's expression softened. "Say you'll think about it." "That's all I'm asking for now." Willow nodded slowly. "All right, I'll think about it." The ride back to Oatman was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the hotel, Mason helped her down from the horse, his hands lingering at her waist just a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for everything," Willow said, suddenly shy. "Please thank Mrs. Holloway again for her hospitality." "I will," Mason promised, "and I'll see you in church tomorrow." "Yes," Willow agreed. "Tomorrow." As she watched him ride away, Willow felt both lighter and heavier than before, lighter with the unexpected joy of connection, heavier with the weight of possibility and the fear of hope after so long without it. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Willow dressed carefully in her best dress, a deep green that brought out the color in her eyes. She applied her rice powder, pinned her hair neatly, and added a small cameo brooch at her throat, a gift from her mother on her 18th birthday, one of the few possessions she'd managed to keep after the epidemic. The small church was already filling when she arrived. Beatrice Jenkins waved her over to sit with her family, a kindness Willow appreciated. As the service was about to begin, the door opened and Mason entered with Samuel and Emma. The children were dressed in their Sunday best, and Mason wore a dark suit that transformed him from rancher to gentleman. His eyes found hers immediately, and his smile sent warmth through her body. After a moment's hesitation, he guided the children to the pew directly behind where Willow sat. Throughout the service, she was acutely aware of his presence, the sound of his voice joining in the hymns, the rustle of movement as he helped Emma find her place in the Bible. After the service, as people gathered outside to visit, Mason approached her, Samuel and Emma in tow. "Miss Fairchild," he greeted her formally, conscious of the eyes upon them. "Beautiful morning." "It is indeed, Mr. O'Malley." Emma tugged at Willow's skirt. "Are you coming to Sunday dinner with us, Miss Fairchild? Mrs. Holloway's making chicken and dumplings, and she said I could help with the apple pie." Willow glanced at Mason, who looked both embarrassed and hopeful. "Emma, I didn't actually ask Miss Fairchild yet," he chided gently. "Well, you should," the girl said matter-of-factly. "You said you were going to." Samuel rolled his eyes. "You talk too much, Emma." Mason cleared his throat. "Since my niece has so tactfully brought it up, would you care to join us for Sunday dinner, Miss Fairchild?" Willow was aware of curious glances from nearby churchgoers, but the genuine warmth in Mason's invitation and the hopeful expressions on the children's faces made her decision easy. "I'd be delighted, thank you." That Sunday dinner marked the beginning of a courtship that soon had the town of Oatman buzzing with speculation. Every Sunday, Willow joined the O'Malleys for dinner. Mason began appearing in town on Wednesdays, ostensibly for supplies, but always finding time to walk Willow home from school. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a book he thought she'd enjoy, wildflowers picked along the trail, once a beautiful shawl he'd purchased on a cattle-selling trip to Prescott. For Willow, the attention was both wonderful and terrifying. Each time Mason looked at her with warmth in his eyes, each casual touch of his hand against hers, awakened feelings she'd thought long dead. Yet she couldn't shake the fear that someday he would look at her and finally see what everyone else saw, a woman marked and diminished by disease. The children, however, had no such reservations. Emma adopted Willow as a combination of favorite teacher and surrogate mother, constantly seeking her approval and affection. Samuel was more reserved, but Willow noticed him watching her interactions with his uncle, a thoughtful expression on his young face. One Wednesday in late May, Mason arrived at the schoolhouse just as Willow was dismissing the children for the day. He waited patiently as she spoke with parents and straightened the classroom, then presented her with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" she asked, surprised. "Open it and see," he urged, a hint of nervousness in his smile. Inside the package was a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. Willow opened it to find a tiny pressed wildflower, the first blossom of the desert sage that grew on the ridge where they had talked that morning after her stay at the ranch. "Mason, it's beautiful," she whispered. "May I?" he asked, taking the necklace. Willow turned, lifting her hair as he fastened the chain around her neck. His fingers brushed the sensitive skin at her nape, sending a shiver down her spine. When she turned back to face him, his expression was serious. "Willow, I've been wanting to ask you something." "Yes." Her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure he must hear it. "Would you join me for dinner on Saturday? Just the two of us. Mrs. Holloway will be with the children, but I thought we might have some time alone." The invitation was significant, a step beyond the family dinners they'd shared, an acknowledgement that what was growing between them was more than friendship. "I'd like that very much," Willow said softly. Saturday evening found Willow at the O'Malley Ranch once more, this time dressed in her best blue silk dress, her hair arranged more elaborately than usual. Mason met her at the door, looking handsome in a clean white shirt and dark vest, his hair still damp from washing. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes appreciative as they took in her appearance. "Thank you," Willow replied, fighting the urge to touch her face, to remind him of what he seemed to have forgotten, that no fine dress or careful hairstyle could hide the reality of her scarred skin. He led her not to the dining room but to the back porch, where a small table had been set with candles and flowers. The view overlooked the garden and pastures beyond, with the setting sun casting everything in a golden glow. "I thought we might enjoy the sunset," Mason explained, "and I asked Mrs. Holloway to prepare your favorites." The meal was indeed perfect: tender roast chicken, fresh vegetables from the garden, and a chocolate cake that Mason admitted he'd requested specially, remembering Willow mentioning once that chocolate was her weakness. As they ate, they talked of everything and nothing: books they'd both read, the progress of Samuel and Emma in school, plans for the ranch's expansion. As darkness fell and the candles cast a warm glow over the table, Mason reached across to take her hand. "Willow, these past weeks have been the happiest I've known in years. Being with you, it feels right, in a way few things have since Caroline died." Willow squeezed his hand but remained silent, her heart too full for words. "I know it hasn't been long," Mason continued, "but I'm not a man who hesitates when he knows what he wants, and I want you in my life not just on Sundays or Wednesdays but every day." "Mason, let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I know you've built walls to protect yourself, and I respect that. All I'm asking is that you consider a future with me, with us. Emma and Samuel need a mother, and I—" He paused, his eyes holding hers. "I need you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with hope and possibility. Willow withdrew her hand slowly, her thoughts in turmoil. "You don't know what you're asking," she said finally. "You see me now in the candlelight, but Mason, this," she gestured to her face, "this doesn't go away. Every morning you'd wake up to these scars. Every time we went to town, you'd see the looks, hear the whispers. The children would face questions, perhaps even cruelty, because their uncle married the scarred schoolteacher." Mason's expression grew serious. "Is that what you think? That I don't see you clearly? That I somehow forget about your scars when I'm with you, don't you?" Willow challenged. "How can you look at me and not see them?" "I see them," Mason said firmly. "I see them, and I see the strength it took to survive what killed your family. I see the courage it takes to face a classroom of children, knowing they'll stare and question. I see the kindness that makes you gentle with Emma's endless questions and patient with Samuel's stubbornness." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I see all of you, Willow Fairchild. And I love what I see." The word love hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging it directly but both feeling its weight. "I need time," Willow said finally. "This is all happening so fast." Mason nodded, visibly restraining his disappointment. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The remainder of the evening passed in more casual conversation, but an undercurrent of tension remained. When Mason drove her back to town, he helped her down from the buggy, his hand lingering on hers. "Good night, Willow," he said softly. "Thank you for tonight." "Good night, Mason," she replied, and before she could overthink it, she stretched up and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. The surprise and pleasure in his eyes stayed with her long after he'd driven away. For the next week, Willow wrestled with her feelings. By day, She taught her students, attended to her duties, and maintained her usual routines. By night, she paced her small hotel room, weighing the risk of hope against the safety of solitude. On Thursday afternoon, as she was closing up the schoolhouse, she heard a commotion outside. Running to the door, she saw a crowd gathering in the street. Harold Jenkins spotted her and hurried over, his face grave. "Miss Fairchild, there's been an accident at the O'Malley Ranch. Mason was thrown from his horse while checking the herd. They've just brought him to Doc Wilson's." Willow's heart seemed to stop. "Is he? How badly is he hurt?" "Don't know the details, madam. The ranch hand who came for the doctor said he was unconscious when they found him. The children are at the doctor's office now." Without a second thought, Willow grabbed her shawl and hurried toward the doctor's house. Inside, she found Emma sobbing in Mrs. Holloway's arms while Samuel stood rigid by the window, his young face a mask of controlled fear. Emma saw her first. "Miss Fairchild," she cried, breaking free of Mrs. Holloway and running to Willow, who knelt to embrace her. "Uncle Mason fell off Thunderbird and he won't wake up, and Doc Wilson won't let us see him." "SHH, it's all right," Willow soothed, stroking the girl's hair. "Your uncle is strong and Dr. Wilson is taking good care of him." She looked over Emma's head at Samuel, who hadn't moved. "Samuel, are you all right?" The boy nodded stiffly, but Willow could see the fear in his eyes. She held out her free arm, and after a moment's hesitation, he came to her, allowing himself to be drawn into the embrace. "It's my fault," he whispered, so low only Willow could hear. "We argued this morning. I said mean things." Willow's heart ached for the boy. "Samuel, look at me," she said firmly. "This is not your fault. Accidents happen, especially with horses. Your uncle loves you very much, and nothing you said could have caused this." Before Samuel could respond, the door to the examination room opened, and Dr. Wilson emerged, looking tired but not grave. "He's awake," the doctor announced. "Concussion, 2 broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder that I've reset. He'll need rest, but he's going to be fine." Emma's tears turned to joy as she hugged Willow tighter. Samuel's body sagged with relief against her side. "Can we see him?" the boy asked, his voice steadier now. "Briefly," Dr. Wilson agreed. "He needs rest, but he's been asking for you." Willow started to release the children, but Emma clung to her hand. "Come with us, Miss Fairchild, please." She hesitated, looking to Mrs. Holloway, who nodded encouragingly. "Go on. He'd want to see you too." The examination room was small and dimly lit. Mason lay on a narrow bed, his face pale against the pillows, a bandage around his head and his left arm in a sling. Despite his injuries, his eyes brightened when he saw the children and then widened in surprise when he saw Willow behind them. "Uncle Mason!" Emma rushed forward, only to be caught gently by Willow before she could throw herself at the injured man. "Careful, sweetheart," Willow cautioned. "Your uncle is hurting right now. Gentle touches only." Emma approached more carefully, placing a small hand on Mason's uninjured arm. Samuel hung back, his face still tight with guilt. "You two all right?" Mason asked, his voice raspy but strong. "We're fine," Emma assured him. "Miss Fairchild came to be with us." Mason's eyes met Willow's over the children's heads. "Thank you," he said simply, but the warmth in his gaze conveyed much more. After a few minutes, Dr. Wilson shooed the children out, instructing Mrs. Holloway to take them home for supper and rest. "Mason needs to stay here tonight for observation," he explained. "You can come back tomorrow." As Willow turned to follow them out, Mason's voice stopped her. "Willow, could you stay a moment?" She looked at Dr. Wilson, who nodded. "Just a few minutes. He needs rest." When they were alone, Willow approached the bed, taking the chair beside it. "You gave everyone quite a scare," she said softly. Mason attempted a smile that turned into a wince. "Not how I planned to spend my day. Thunderbird stepped in a gopher hole, went down hard and fast. Don't remember much after that. Willow took his hand, careful of the scrapes across his knuckles. Samuel thinks it's his fault. He said you argued this morning. Mason's expression softened. That boy. He blames himself for everything, just like his mother used to. We did argue. He wants to leave school next year, work the ranch full time. I told him education comes first. He's worried about you, Willow said. They both are. And you, Mason's eyes held hers. Were you worried? Willow's throat tightened with emotion. I was terrified, she admitted. When Harold told me you were hurt, I couldn't think of anything except getting to you, to the children. I realized. What? Mason prompted when she fell silent. I realized that somewhere along the way you all became the most important people in my life, and the thought of losing you was unbearable. Mason's hand tightened around hers. Does that mean you've been thinking about what I asked? I've thought of little else, Willow confessed. I'm still afraid, Mason, not of loving you, but of what loving me might cost you. The only thing that would cost me is if you walked away, Mason said earnestly. Willow, when I was lying there after the fall, drifting in and out of consciousness, yours was the face I saw. Not as you imagine I see you, but as you truly are, beautiful, strong, the woman I want beside me for the rest of my life. Willow felt tears welling in her eyes. You need to rest, she said, trying to lighten the moment. Doctor's orders. Mason refused to be diverted. Tell me you'll at least consider being my wife. That's all I'm asking right now. The word wife sent a shock through Willow's system. Despite their growing closeness, despite his earlier hints about a future together, hearing the proposal stated so plainly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I'll consider it, she promised, her voice barely above a whisper. Mason's smile was tired but triumphant. That's all I ask. For now. Dr. Wilson returned then, shooing Willow out despite Mason's protests. You can court the lady when you're not in my sick bed, O'Malley. For now, you need sleep. The next day was Friday, but Willow couldn't concentrate on teaching. She dismissed the children early and went directly to the doctor's office, where she found Mason sitting up in bed, arguing with Dr. Wilson about when he could return home. The children need me, he was insisting as Willow entered. The children need you alive and healing, Dr. Wilson countered. One more day of rest won't kill you, but riding that wagon over those rutted trails with broken ribs just might. I'll stay with them, Willow offered impulsively. Both men turned to look at her in surprise. At the ranch, she clarified. I can stay with the children until Mason is well enough to return home. Dr. Wilson considered this. Mrs. Holloway is there, of course, but having another adult around would ease my mind, especially someone with a level head. He gave Mason a pointed look. Unlike some people I could mention. It's settled then, Willow said with more confidence than she felt. I'll go pack a bag and head out to the ranch this afternoon. As soon as Dr. Wilson left to check on another patient, Mason reached for her hand. You don't have to do this, he said. Though I'm grateful. I want to, Willow assured him. The children need stability right now, and I care about them, about all of you. Mason's eyes softened. I know you do, and they adore you. He hesitated, then added, this will give you a taste of what life would be like. At the ranch, I mean. With us. The implication hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging it directly but both aware of its weight. That afternoon, Willow arrived at the O'Malley ranch with a small trunk of belongings. Emma was overjoyed to see her, throwing her arms around Willow's waist and declaring it would be just like having a mama again. Samuel was more reserved but clearly relieved by her presence, helping carry her trunk to the guest room she'd stayed in before. Mrs. Holloway welcomed her warmly. Thank goodness you're here, the older woman said as they prepared dinner together. Those children have been beside themselves with worry, especially the boy. Won't talk about it, but I can see it eating at him. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Willow found Samuel sitting on the front porch steps, staring out at the darkening ranch yard. She sat beside him, not speaking at first, simply offering her presence. "Is Uncle Mason really going to be all right?" Samuel finally asked, his voice small. "Yes," Willow assured him. "Dr. Wilson says he'll be sore for a while, but he'll heal completely. He's very strong." Samuel nodded, picking at a loose thread on his pants. "I said I hated him," he confessed after a long silence. "Yesterday morning when we argued about school. I said I hated him and wished he wasn't my uncle." Willow's heart ached for the boy. "Oh, Samuel, we all say things we don't mean when we're angry. But what if those were the last words I ever said to him?" Samuel's voice broke. "What if he had died thinking I hated him?" Willow put her arm around his thin shoulders, and to her surprise, he leaned into her embrace. "Your uncle knows you love him, Samuel. He knows you're grieving for your mother and trying to find your place in the world, and he loves you more than anything. He wants me to stay in school, but I want to be a rancher like him," Samuel explained. "I'm not good at book learning like Emma is." "You're very good at mathematics," Willow pointed out. "And a successful rancher needs to understand numbers, calculating feed costs, profit margins, breeding records. Your uncle wants you to have choices in life, that's all." Samuel considered this. "I never thought about it that way." "Maybe when he's feeling better you could talk to him about your concerns. Really talk, not argue. Tell him your dreams and listen to his advice. He only wants what's best for you." Samuel nodded slowly. Will you help me talk to him? Sometimes I get mad and say the wrong things." "Of course I will," Willow promised, touched by his trust in her. The next day, Dr. Wilson drove Mason home in his buggy, declaring him fit to recover in his own bed as long as he promised not to work for at least a week. Samuel and Emma hovered anxiously as Willow and Mrs. Holloway settled Mason in his room, plumping pillows and arranging things within easy reach. "I'm not an invalid," Mason protested, though his pale face and careful movements belied his words. "Of course not," Willow agreed soothingly, "but even the strongest men need rest after being thrown from a horse." When Mason was comfortably settled, Willow left him with the children, who had promised to read to him from one of Caroline's favorite books. Downstairs, she found Mrs. Holloway preparing a tray with broth and tea. "He's lucky, that one," the housekeeper commented. "Could have broken his neck instead of just some ribs." She gave Willow a knowing look. "And lucky in other ways too, I'd say." Willow felt her cheeks warm. "Mrs. Holloway." "Oh, don't mind me," the older woman said with a wave of her hand. "I've known Mason O'Malley since he was Samuel's age. Never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. Not even Eliza Thompson, and everyone thought he'd marry her before she ran off with that drummer from St. Louis." "I didn't know Mason had been involved with someone before," Willow said, trying to keep her voice neutral. Mrs. Holloway snorted. "Involved? They were practically engaged until she decided ranch life wasn't fancy enough for her. Broke his heart, that girl did. Then Caroline died 2 years later, leaving him with the children, and he's had no time for courting since." She eyed Willow appraisingly. "Until you came along." Willow busied herself arranging napkins on the tray, unsure how to respond. The thought of Mason with another woman, a beautiful woman without scars, who had rejected him, stirred uncomfortable feelings she hadn't expected. "Well," she said finally, "I should take this up to him before it gets cold." The days fell into a comfortable routine. Willow spent mornings teaching Emma and Samuel at the kitchen table, continuing their education despite the school's closure for the summer. Afternoons were for helping Mrs. Holloway with household tasks, or sitting with Mason as he recovered, reading to him or simply talking. In the evenings, they gathered in the sitting room, Mason in his armchair, the children on the floor with games or books, Willow knitting or grading the children's work. It was domestic, comfortable, and increasingly precious to Willow. She found herself imagining a future where these evenings weren't temporary, where this house was her home, these children her family, this man her husband. As Mason's strength returned, he began joining them for meals at the table and taking short walks around the yard with Willow's support. During one such walk, about a week after the accident, he broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. "You seem happy here," he observed as they slowly circled the kitchen garden, his arm linked with hers for balance. "I am," Willow admitted. "The children are wonderful and Mrs. Holloway has been so kind." "And me?" Mason asked, stopping to look at her. "How do you feel about spending these days with me?" Willow met his gaze steadily. "I think you know the answer to that." "I'd rather hear you say it," he pressed gently. "I've never been happier," Willow confessed. "Being here with you and the children. It feels like the home I thought I'd never have again after my family died." Mason's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb gently tracing one of the deeper scars near her temple. "Then stay," he said simply. "Be my wife, be our family." Willow's heart raced at his touch and his words. For so long, she defined herself by her scars, assuming they defined her in others' eyes as well. But Mason looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw beyond them to the woman beneath. "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really certain, Mason. Because once you make this decision, there's no going back. People will talk. They'll question why someone like you would choose someone like me." Mason's expression grew serious. "Let me tell you what I see when I look at you, Willow Fairchild. I see a woman who survived when others didn't, who carries the marks of that battle on her skin, but doesn't let them define her spirit. I see a teacher who inspires children to learn, a friend who drops everything to care for a family in need, a woman whose smile lights up a room and whose mind challenges and delights me." His thumb continued its gentle exploration of her face, tracing each scar with tender precision. "These prove you're a fighter, Willow. They show you faced death and won. How could I not admire such strength? How could I not love the woman who possesses it?" Tears filled Willow's eyes, spilling onto her cheeks and over his fingers. "I love you," she whispered, the words she'd held back for so long finally breaking free. "I love you, and I'm afraid of losing you, and I'm afraid of loving you too much. And I'm afraid of what the world will say, but most of all, I'm afraid of living without you now that I know what it's like to be with you." Mason's smile was radiant as he leaned down, mindful of his healing ribs, and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle, perfect first kiss. "Then marry me," he murmured against her mouth. "Marry me and we'll face whatever comes together." "Yes," Willow breathed, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their second kiss was deeper, a promise sealed with growing passion, broken only when a delighted squeal came from the direction of the house. They turned to see Emma jumping up and down on the porch while Samuel tried unsuccessfully to pull her back inside. "I told you she'd say yes," Emma shouted triumphantly to her brother. "I told you," Mason laughed, then winced, pressing a hand to his side. "So much for a private moment. Are you ready for this, Miss Fairchild? A lifetime of very little privacy and 2 opinionated children." Willow smiled through her tears, her decision crystallizing into absolute certainty. "More ready than I've ever been for anything, Mr. O'Malley." The wedding took place in late July, a small ceremony in the Oatman church with only close friends in attendance. Willow wore a simple ivory dress that Mrs. Holloway and Emma had secretly worked on, with tiny wildflowers embroidered around the collar and cuffs. Mason stood tall and handsome in a new suit, his injuries healed, his face glowing with happiness as he watched his bride walk down the aisle. Samuel stood proudly as Mason's best man, while Emma served as Willow's maid of honor, carefully carrying a basket of desert blooms she'd gathered herself. Mayor Jenkins performed the ceremony, his genuine pleasure in uniting the couple evident in his beaming face. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," he declared. "Mason, you may kiss your bride." As Mason's lips met hers, Willow felt the last of her reservations melt away. This was her family now. This was her home. This was her future. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard under strings of lanterns. Neighbors and friends from Oatman mingled with Mason's ranch hands and business associates, eating Mrs. Holloway's excellent food and dancing to music provided by a fiddler and guitarist from town. Late in the evening, as the celebration continued around them, Mason led Willow away from the crowd, up to the ridge where he had first asked to court her. The full moon illuminated the landscape, the ranch buildings below twinkling with lights from the party. "Happy, Mrs. O'Malley?" Mason asked, his arm around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Willow replied, leaning into his embrace. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for being brave enough to take a chance on us." Mason turned her gently to face him, his hands coming up to cup her face, thumbs tracing the now familiar pattern of her scars. "My beautiful, strong wife. My husband," Willow whispered, still amazed that she could say those words. "My family." Their kiss was tender, a promise for the future they would build together, a future where scars were badges of honor, where strength was measured in survival, and where love healed wounds both visible and hidden. In the years that followed, the O'Malley Ranch prospered under Mason's capable management and Willow's organizational skills. The school in Oatman grew as the town did, eventually requiring a second teacher to assist Willow, who divided her time between education and ranch business. Samuel decided to complete his schooling after all, going on to study agricultural methods in California before returning to help expand the family ranch. Emma's talents in art and literature flourished under Willow's guidance, leading eventually to her own career as an illustrator for children's books. And in the spring of 1880, Willow gave birth to a son, Michael, followed 2 years later by a daughter, Caroline. The family Willow had once thought forever lost to her had been reborn in a different form, in a different place, but with the same love at its heart. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Mason gave Willow a special gift, a portrait of the two of them with all 4 children, painted by a traveling artist who had stayed at the ranch. In it, Willow's scars were visible but not emphasized, simply part of the face that smiled radiantly at the viewer, surrounded by the family who loved her. "To remind you," Mason said as she unwrapped it, "that these marks brought you to us. That without them, your path might never have led to Oatman, to the schoolhouse, to our family." Willow touched the canvas gently, seeing in the painted faces the truth of their lives together, the challenges overcome, the love shared, the family built from loss and hope and courage. "I wouldn't change a single scar," she said, and meant it with all her heart. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Mason's fingers traced the familiar patterns on her skin, each touch a testament to the words he had spoken years ago. These marks were proof of her fight, her survival, her strength. And in loving them, in loving her, he had taught Willow to love herself again, scars and all.